Hi, everyone, and welcome to the demo of Source Insights. My name is Alistair Heys. I'm a senior product manager at Source Labs. I joined about a year ago, and I look after the insights part of our product, working closely with our data science team, our data engineering team, and then we have a product team to improve the existing reporting dashboarding we have, but then also start looking at um, more complicated analysis that we can do to help customers get much better insights into their testing and improve. Um, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A. This is much more of an interactive session. It's a live demo, so I get to do all the fun things that come with that. But feel free to ask questions. I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. If something resonates with you, feel free to say yes, oh, that makes sense in the chat. If something doesn't make sense, throw a question out there, and we can go ahead and get started. So you should be able to see my screen now, which it looks like you can. So this is the Source Labs platform. I know most of you are probably familiar with it, but some of you might not be. And what I'm going to do today is run through pretty much three different things. We're going to start with test insights, which includes the test overview, as well as the test history reports. Test overview is new as of today, was released. The insights is a newer piece for most of our self-serve customers. So those are our non-enterprise customers. It's been enabled. And then we're going to jump into something that's not publicly available, but we've got an open beta where we're starting to enroll customers, and we can dive into some examples, and that is failure analysis and what that looks like. So I'm going to start off with the Insights tab. And under the Insights tab, you'll be able to see the test overview submenu item. This is as I said, our latest report. It's got three tabs up here. And really the idea is it's to start providing information in aggregate that allows you to understand how your tests are running, where issues may occur, to make sure you have good coverage, and to be able to start investigating any questions you may have so that you can get some answers. So why don't we start things off? All three tabs have a similar set of filters. So that allows you to look at your organization or yourself, if you use teams or individual users. So you can keep those. If you use build information, you're able to filter based on that, by OS or by browser with the version. Time period's flexible, so you can go from your last 7 days, 6 hours, any sort of relative time up to 30 days, including absolute measures. So if you have a period of time, if you did a release and you want to see how your tests of production were running, or if you're leading up to production, you can check there. There's three different sections on this tab. The first piece is around your test case health snapshot. So that gives you, for a given period, instead of filters, the total number of unique tests that have been run. Obviously, in this case, it's relatively small. This is what I run every morning from my laptop, just so that I have items to demo. You can look at the total number that are consistently failing, passing, or errored, the ones that are missing status, or the ones that pass and fail. We're looking to make enhancements to the page and possibly opening up what we'd consider constantly failing or constantly passing. The next tab down is just a summary. So total tests run during that period, passed, errored, failed, complete. Complete is when there is no test status associated with the given test. And then we have the measure for the previous period. So if this is a 7-day period, this would be the 7 days before that, as well as the trend. So I'm either running more tests, running less tests, more erroring, less erroring. Really just give you that overall picture of where a given build or team or individual user is at for that given period of time. Then we get to the test breakdown. So often, you're asked, do we have enough coverage? What are we testing on? How is a particular browser version going? Are there lots of problems associated with the new Edge release? Things like that. And our hope here is that, by getting the filters to what makes sense to you, you're able to come in and see the number of tests run for any given browser, the failing rate, the erroring rate, but then also drill down and say, are there discrepancies when I look at the different versions of Chrome? So great use case for this might be that you try and make sure that you're testing ahead of major Chrome releases. You're able to use our beta releases on our virtual desktop. And you come in and you see that actually our Chrome beta is really not looking good. There's a ton of failing tests that are very different from what we'd expect to see. Our hope would be that you can then drill in, ask more questions, figure out why, and start fixing those. The second tab gives you your information by test. So this aggregates on a test name. It gives you your test count, the average test duration for the given period, which is something that we got a lot of feedback on, that users are really looking to understand, is this changing? Where are my tests? Where are my slow tests that are really bogging down my system? How can I make best use of the concurrency that I have? As well as the given pass rate. At the moment, we've limited this to 50 tests. As we continue to improve the product, you can expect to see that will expand, and you'll be able to paginate through all of your tests, and then again drill down based on team, OS, browser, maybe your build, and other ideas depending on the sort of feedback we get from users as to what other filters they'd like to see on this page. One pretty nice piece of this is that you can leverage the existing reporting we have, and if you see something that doesn't make sense to you, like in this case, my valid user test that I've run 72 times and it's passed 94% of the time, I can jump straight from here to the test history report. And what it will do is load up that report for the given time period with all of the information. So that if I see something strange, I can drill right in. So in this case, I can drill in, I can see it's on Chrome beta. I can understand that, there was an infrastructure error. And that's actually one of the bugs my team's fixing currently. From there, I can also drill in to see the individual test execution or execution. So that way you can really go from a kind of aggregate view where you notice something that's a little out of the ordinary, all the way down into an individual test to hopefully remediate whatever either issue was, or to understand more about what the underlying cause is, or what the underlying cause might be. So if I go back to test overview, one of the other nice things is there's a little linkage between the overview tab and the test tab. I can quickly jump across and see any tests that are consistently failing, or look at any of the other measures to get down to a subset of my tests, and again filter those based on build or OS, and see and really start to understand the nuances within your tests. The third tab is all of the errors you see in the system. Those would include any error that might be a system error, but also user errors. Are any of your tests, or do you consistently see tests that don't get ended? So it then runs for an extra 90 seconds and times out. A lot of the time, we see when we look across our whole user base, a pretty small subset of tests that have the large majority of errors. Obviously, this means that test is going to be executing for longer, taking up more of your concurrency, but also allows you to communicate the scale of any given problem, which in some cases can be relatively large. You're able to drill down and see the latest 10 examples of these. So then that way, again, you can go and understand where it is. And again, you can filter. So as you go through your organization, you might see a large number of errors based on something. Is it isolated within a given team, or is it isolated for a given user? Is there a way to then remediate that with that user and track it over time to make sure it's getting better rather than worse? Make sure it's trending in the right way. So I'm just gonna check the chat. If anyone has any questions, feel free to pop it in the Q&A. If anyone's had a chance to take a look, feel free to comment about what they think. Otherwise, I'm gonna move on to the failure analysis set of functionality we have. So about half an hour ago, Marcus Merrill and I were doing kind of the introductory session to not just this report, but the investments we're making as an organization into insights. talking about why we're doing it, what the underlying values we think we can provide, what the underlying value we can provide is, looking at helping customers solve problems at scale. Really provide information that's not necessarily easy to put together yourself, due to scale or variability or things like that. But this is the first feature we have. So I'm going to run through 3 different views on the information. This is obviously a relatively small sample set. It's just my individual user. But if you're interested in getting access and becoming a beta client, you can speak to your CSM. At the moment, it's for enterprise only. And we can look to enable if your account provided you're on the latest team management version, and provided that you send enough pass-fail information. So test indicators pass and failed, and the system can understand what tests to look at as having failed. So in this case, you'll notice that there are 6 different failure reasons for this given test. We start with a random noun association just to try and give it some sort of human readable format. I can look at the different tests, and in most cases there'd be a lot more of them, and drill down to individual failure pattern, which will show you the given Selenium or Appium commands that we've identified as being part of that failure pattern. Now, in this case, it's quite a few. Some cases have lots, some cases have little. That's one of the things we're refining as we experiment with the sensitivity of the underlying model that can identify these. In this case, I filtered it for a specific test, but I can remove that to see that over my whole test suite. I can also expand it to 30 days or more. And again, it's divisible by my individual user, my team, the company as a whole. So really, it should allow you to get that perspective of how pervasive is this issue. Does it sit across multiple teams? And where can I get the most value? So on this first tab, it orders it by total failed test. We're looking to make improvements to include some other dimensions to that data, so that you're able to determine what's most impactful for your organization, and determine where you can get the most value from it. Another way to look at it is just purely by failure patterns. Drill in. You can go from here and go into that individual test execution, and understand exactly where that pattern's occurring. In the cases of test executions that may have upwards of 500 commands from the Selenium Appium log, you are able to filter just in the context to these particular ones. Our hope here is that it'll provide you the information needed and give you a good indication of where that failure is occurring, so that you can quickly debug it, or understand what the underlying issue is. From here, you can go back to the analysis, see it in the context of just this test for just this date, but then also, again, expand it to a bigger set, to be able to then fix it at scale, hopefully, and remove multiple failures at the same time. The final way that we are we're looking at this, sorry, I was just reading the questions and making sure I can address them. The final way that we are looking at the moment at showing this information is in the context of a build. So if I go to one that has errors associated, I can see that I have failure patterns, and then I can see the same information filtered down per build. You'll see that the name I had edited to say what the problem is persists throughout the organization. And this is really just our first pass at helping you to start classifying what these problems are and seeing what the underlying issues are. So that's the main portion of the demo. So I'm going to move over to the Q&A, just to make sure that I can cover everything. Feel free to pop any more questions you may have in there. So one question we got was, what is the difference between this failure analysis against Selenium and system logs? That's a great question. So the way that this currently works is, this is, if I use a test as an example, drive right through. This is driven by what we find in the Selenium Server Log. So it looks at all the pieces that are here. The reason it does that is so that we as a SaaS provider can get more scale out of the solution, because obviously there's infinite ways that these things can be different and that people can have different setups, but this is one of the more common assets that we have that sits across a lot of our tests that are run on our system. This and the equivalent Appium log. We'll look to extend it possibly to other information and other inputs over time. That's definitely one of our goals. But what we wanted to do was get the first iteration, which is this, out to our customers, so that we can get feedback on it, make sure that that we can prove the underlying model and logic of the solution, to say, hey, we do think that this concept that we're putting out there has legs. We can show through our customers that it is finding patterns that make sense and that are finding problems and underlying problems that are in systems. Just out of curiosity is the next question. Just out of curiosity, in the UI, is the UI customizable to any extent? Right now, it's not super flexible. So I'm going to make some assumptions, and please feel free to comment again in the Q&A, that you're talking possibly about some personalization. There's not a lot of personalization in the system currently. We do have what I would consider a lot of flexibility in the system in terms of what will show and won't show when you run different types of tests with different capabilities. But right now we don't have personalization per se, but we do also have permission structure and organizational structures that will automatically filter what you can and can't see. Jobs have permissions around visibility and things like that. The next question we got is, do all automation tests and VMs and real devices appear in failure analysis? Great question. So right now, this is just for virtual devices. So that would be MUSIM as well as browser testing. We are looking to expand it to real devices for Appium, and at some point assess and hopefully enable it for things like XUI tests and Espresso and whatever else we may support in time. But for now, we focused on where the highest volume is, and that's really so the model can have a lot of data to deal with and learn from. Another question. So we got, how is this different from Report Portal IO? I'll admit I'm by no means an expert on Report Portal IO. My limited understanding of their failure analysis is they took a slightly different approach, which is looking for specific types of failures. The approach we've taken is that we're looking for patterns that are indicative of failures. The idea being that it's not limited in scope to a specific set. And he said that looking through their solution, they seem to have some really interesting concepts that we should probably look to try and solve similar problems. Next question. Sometimes we're facing unrelated error, not related to the actual error. How are you handling that? Yeah, so by looking at the Appium and well, okay, so I'm gonna talk through two different scenarios. One is that there's underlying QA environment issue where a resource is missing. So you try and hit a URL, it's just not there, it's down. One way that we might be able to pick that up as in this solution is that it's gonna see a response that's empty. That's an example I've seen, in which case it'll start tying these tests together. That's not to say it would be perfect. The other way we're looking to handle some of these is that we're going to do different types of analysis and layer it on top of this with using different types of assets. So not just Appium and Selenium logs, but look to extend it to other assets where we think some of those errors might be easier to spot and raise the user's attention. There's another question. Is there a way to export a report or specified results and /insights? Currently there isn't. besides using our API. We do have APIs available for some of the reporting. We recognize that that's probably not sufficient right now, so we are looking to improve that throughout the year. The other piece that we're looking to improve is just even within the app itself, being able to download CSVs or equivalents or something like that for any given data set, I think makes a lot of sense. And we're actively investigating putting that into the product in a number of different contexts, not just failure analysis, but across the board. So a great question from Laurie. Once a failure is resolved and the test is rerun, how will that appear in the report? Will it be duplicated? So right now in the report, if the test stopped failing, what we would expect is that test no longer, that second or the rerun of the test wouldn't appear because it didn't fail. So it wouldn't be associated with that given failure pattern, if that makes sense. One aspect we're looking into, which is something that's come up with a couple of our early beta clients, and I'm sure we'll come up with more people, is how do you assess, am I fixing these failures over time, and are we resolving them, and are we getting better? I mean, there's probably a correlation to the overall pass-fail rate, but we're looking at, how do we better enable the user to either indicate something as pass-failed or track it over time. And sorry, maybe I misunderstood that question slightly. So I'm just going to do a little bit more detail. So you would see each individual failure for the test under the failure pattern for the given time period, and then if one passed, you don't see it there. So we got another question, which was, how are we handling some hardware issue like soft touch keyboard not working in real time device, even though the app is loaded? I don't know the specifics of that challenge. I'm going to make the assumption that might result in an error. In which case, if that assumption is true, that wouldn't be included as part of this analysis. We're strictly looking at tests where our customer indicates that they're a failure versus a pass for a given test name. So anything that's errored gets ignored from the analysis, just so that we have some sort of baseline for what to expect and what not to expect. Yeah, so in the last couple of minutes of the session, I think it'd be good maybe to reiterate how to get in touch. Reach out to your CSM or email failureanalysis@sourcelabs.com, and we can get your account set up, provide your enterprise customer. You're on the latest version of team management, and you send enough pass-fail data. If you don't have pass-fail information set up for your tests, we can absolutely help you take care of that. To reach out anyway, and we can engage with our solution architects or support team to help you get that set up. Because then not only do you get access to failure analysis, but you can get a lot more useful information from the rest of our reporting, such as test overview and test history and trends. I'm just going to look, and yeah, so it doesn't look like there are any other questions. Oh, that's a great question. So is there any way to handle issues so we don't show failure for known issues for each run? Right now, there's not. That's certainly a request that's come up before, where if I know, if I expect it to fail and I know what the reason is, can I just say ignore? I think that speaks to a larger problem which we're going to be trying to solve. So that's, how do we take this underlying model that has some intelligence and make it more intelligent? So included with that would be things like, how do we let a user indicate that this failure pattern was spot on, that this other failure pattern wasn't the right failure pattern at all, it pulled together the wrong tests. With analysis like this, where it's not necessarily either right or wrong, there's a lot of fuzziness in it sometimes. We're going to be building in those mechanisms to get that feedback, and I think it speaks to this, but also a larger set of requirements within our system that gives the user more flexibility in possibly doing things like updating the state of tests, and being able to annotate tests to say, hey, this actually wasn't a failure, or this failed for this reason, and for the system to then aggregate appropriately based on those changes from what the user has said. That would be the intention. Sorry, I'm just looking at another question, which was, would that be part of failure analysis too? So yes, we're looking at treating this as a set of features, as a product that we would start figuring out which pieces we would include where, so that we can make sure that the overall picture of your test executions and your testing is accurate and representative of what took place, and not just what happened at one point in time that isn't editable. And there's not a expected date for that right now. We have a team of people where we, to give a bit of insight into the way we work, it's my job to make sure that we are continually improving our products. Generally, we look at what is the most impactful to our current customers, trying to balance trying to anticipate future needs of the industry as a whole, and then also solving problems that occur now, which is kind of why we capture as much as we can, and then constantly prioritize and reprioritize and see where we can make the most impact at any given time. So for right now, that specific feature isn't planned as in it's imminently going to be delivered, but it is in the larger collection of pieces of work we'd like to do and improve upon and problems to solve. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. It's pretty amazing that this many people, I know it's been a bit of a long day, but thank you so much for joining me, and have a great rest of your day and evening.